I'm co-host James Ash.
And I'm co-host Phil Scaife.
Welcome to the Business Lockdown. We would love to welcome to today's show Jonathan and Christina from Moodbeam. Welcome, guys.
Yeah, welcome, guys.
How are you doing?
So, bit of a background. I've known Jonathan for about 15 years now. We've been very close friends for a long time. But we've done a variety of things together. We've joined through fashion businesses that I had, through a monocle business that Jonathan's part of. I was actually selling monocles in Bangkok to the Vice Prime Minister of Bangkok at one stage that we were working on. Christina and I have known each other for about 5 years now. An incredible journey that these guys have been on personally and in business with Moodbeam. Jonathan's background within retail through the Gadget Shop. So there are global shows now around the world called the Gadget Shows. Before Jonathan put the stamp on the industry, they were known as toy and gift shows. If I'm right there, Jonathan. So incredibly happy to have you both on the show today. Super proud not only to know you guys through business, but also to know you as friends as well. So thanks for joining us today. And if you can give us just a little bit of a background about yourselves, how you've got to today where you're at, and also about the product. We're wearing our Moodbeams today. Have we all got them on?
All got them on.
There we go. And we'll also give a bit of insight into how we've used products and the difference it's made to our lives as well and our well-being. So off you go, guys.
Shall we start at the beginning?
Yeah, you go.
Yes.
We start at the beginning of the Moodbeam story. Our journey began really 4 years ago, probably a bit longer now actually. And to give a bit of background, I was a working journalist back then with my own sort of media company, and I had 2 young children at primary school. And one day my eldest, who was 7 at the time, came home and she was very, very upset, broke down and said, "Mummy, I'm just having a really awful time at school." And for me, that was a real shock moment for me, because I thought we were that family that spoke about everything. I thought we would have spotted the signs, and I just simply didn't. And the very fact that she at 7 years of age was trying to cope of her own doing made it doubly worse for me as a mum. So everything settled down again. School were very supportive, friends, family, everything started to tick over again. But it left me thinking, what if it happens again? I pretty much remained on high alert as a mum, and I really and truly just wanted to know how my daughter was when she wasn't with me, and on the basis of that, see what that looked like so that we could have a conversation. So that was the idea behind Moodbeam. As I say, my background was in writing, certainly not tech, if you like, but I was introduced properly, if you like, because Jonathan was always the husband of Heather, and we had kids in the same class at the same time, and she goes, "Why don't you have a word with John?" I was also on a program called FEO, which is a local mentoring group in Hull. Really, when you have an idea, what do you do about it? And I rocked up to Jonathan's door, and do you want to lead on, John?
Yeah, I can do. So Christina approached me, I think because I've got some business experience, and she wondered whether or how to try and solve this problem of how you connect with somebody emotionally when you're not with them. I've got a background in setting up businesses, some of which have done really well and some of which have just prodded along. What's the right word?
I think very, very humble there, Jonathan. Some business experience. Did you catch that, Phil?
So some of the better ones were the Gadget Shop, which became, while I was running it, I started that company in 91. It became 50 stores plus before it was acquired, and then another one with my business partner at the time called Red 5, which was another gift and gadget retailer. And then that was sold. And then my plan was to take a little bit of time out. I think I got in about 2 weeks of that before Christina knocked on the door. and said, what do you think? So I said it was going to be tricky. We talked about how it could work, and we talked very early about it being a wearable that a child could use. And I said, you've got to give it a go. And she said, do you want to help me do it? And that was the start of Moodbeam. So we set about trying to prove the concept. Would people use it? Would they get value from it? And we created a minimum viable product, a prototype. And we set about offering it to originally parents who were worried about how their children were feeling at school. But very quickly, the conversation moved to include elderly relatives, and then generally people who might have struggles around mental health, things like anxiety, depression, stress. The idea that somebody could log how they feel in real time and then get a conversation going around that was quite a powerful thing. So we started to get these prototypes out to all sorts of different people in all sorts of different use cases, and we were able to show that people did want it, they would use it, and they did get something from using it, and that allowed us to put a document together to basically raise the funds to put it into production. And it went into production about a year ago and came to market fully about 6 months ago. And now we are at that stage where you can buy it. You can go to Amazon, or you can buy it from our own website and just use it. And that's what we call the personal user, the original use case. You're worried about somebody you care about, connecting families. And then we've got other use cases that have now formed pillars of our kind of focus, and they are health and social care. That would also include education. So that's another area for us, particularly universities. But we are seeing interest from schools now. And then one of the big areas we are working with is workplace well-being. So that is addressing the needs of employees or the workforce to take account of the fact that it's such a huge issue. Workplace well-being and mental health support in the workplace. So we are now getting it out to lots of organizations and individuals. And then the next step will be to scale it further and make more and help more. In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. Also, I mean, you've just mentioned workplace well-being. How does that look right now under these uncertain, challenging, stressful times?
Go on, Christina.
Well, we've been trying to perfect this and what it looks like for 4 years, if you like. And we knew that we were starting to have a world that was evolving into, better forms of communication going forward, tech for good. And also the fact that, mental illness in all its guises was more prevalent, more open, and people were starting to talk about it, but never in our wildest nightmares rather than dreams did we think that we would actually be best placed for right now. But what's actually happening is that because we've worked so blooming hard to perfect the technology and make it accessible and affordable and one size fits all, that what we've found is that in the space of a couple of weeks, we have our existing Moodbeam community, if you like, who are sort of self-users, or those who have bought and gifted for others that they care about. But the personal use case is, huge, let's face it, right now, where we're feeling really very vulnerable. But in the bigger piece of it is the working family relationship, where everybody is trying to figure out what the next few months are going to look like. The working family feels disconnected. We're all embracing virtual meetings, whether we like it or not. And really being able to remain in control of your place as a person and as a professional is everything right now, and trying to keep it together and keep communication going. You've got well-being in the workplace, which in its truest form has really been able to try and see if everybody's coping with the job at hand. But what's actually happened in the space of a week is that we're now having even bigger conversations with companies who are at the forefront, whether that's healthcare, or providing PPE equipment, or any of the above, or simply people just trying to keep connected. So now we've got the whole remote working mechanism as well. And what we're hoping to do for each in each of those instances is really just say, yep, use this tool, keep connected, use it as a project management tool if you want to, or use it just to keep an eye on yourself and just keep in check. And it's really whatever you want to use it for. Have I covered that, John? Anthony, you want to add?
No, I think these are difficult times right now, and people are self-isolating and remote working, and the fact that Moodbeam, one of its key features is it allows you to connect with people quite easily. You can share your data or have somebody share their data with you. That's a powerful thing if you've got perhaps an elderly relative or a friend who's maybe home alone and they can't have visitors. To be able to monitor how they're feeling and get a conversation going at the right moment is sort of now more than ever, really.
And there's no difference from you guys as a business, as a brand, in terms of shipping. You spoke about being with Amazon. So, have Amazon held on? Are they stocking your product so it's ready to be shipped to consumer?
Yeah, there's challenges with Amazon because, as you might know, they have held back on third-party supply to focus on food and products that relate to health and so on. And we're in a different category. We're in a wearable category. So, we could go. You could buy it and get it next day. Now I think the delivery date is quoting April the 21st, which from now is sort of 3 weeks away, something like that. So that's been an issue, and whilst it still carries stock at the moment, it's a slow process to replan at the moment. But our website, we're managing to fulfill on time, within a couple of days. So people can always get a hold of one reasonably quickly. But yeah, that's some of the challenges that we see at the moment.
Yeah, I was just going to add that because we are sort of, quite an agile team and all working remotely, we had the foresight, if you like, to bring stock local to us so that when orders come in, we can get those dispatched urgently for anybody who wants one and needs one.
Have you seen an increase in sales since over the last few weeks with the coronavirus and people maybe struggling with their wellness, their well-being, wanting to improve on that, especially within a family environment, the home environment?
I'll let you answer that, Christina, if you like.
I would say, sorry, I think my screen's maybe breaking up a little bit there, but no, I would say that we've almost answered that spike, because what we did at the end of last week was we preempted worry by launching a 100 gifting campaign. So 100 devices for people who got in touch and said, look, I'm worried about myself, I'm worried about a loved one. And that went through a really simple process of contacting us through the website, communicating that need, and we have just dispatched all of those. But the bigger story behind that is that when we first set up Moodbeam, we always have wanted to give back, if you like, and we are a small startup, getting established every day, but really the emphasis was that we want to help people ultimately who can't have one and want to access one. So we set up a project of the 1 in 10, which reflects how many people in society experience mental illness, and it is 1 in 10. So we set this up really, and the idea was that for every one purchased 10 purchased through the website, we would put one back into the pot for somebody who wanted one but couldn't access one. So really the 100 was to reflect that, to reflect the fact that we want to give back at this time. We want to make sure that people are feeling secure and cared for, and that's what we did at the end of last week. But we are I would say we are having a lot more interest, if you like, from organizations perhaps, as well as consumers, as well as people who are purchasing for personal use, because they see this as a real benefit for their organization going forward, and trying to keep a real-time morale up, and this is the way that hopefully they can maybe demonstrate that, but we like to think we've been proactive in that respect.
How big's your team? Because presumably you were all in the same office, were you? And now you're working remotely. So
Yeah, I mean, the way we work is we have an outsourced team of developers. So that's not our responsibility in terms of managing them. And we have a few other core skills outsourced as well. In terms of our core team in the office, there's 4 of us, so it's a small team.
Right.
And we're all working from home at the moment. That's as it stands. But yeah, we've got tricky times ahead because the challenge is we've been working with and building up to a lot of organizations, and they have huge priorities now. You know, a large supermarket, for example, you can imagine they have lots of logistical challenges to address. So we were talking to them on a well-being sort of footing, and the things have taken potentially the focus away to more practical, get things done today type of issues. So you know, that's a challenge for us, staying engaged with the organizations.
Yeah.
On the other hand, we've had some organizations we were talking to who have come back to us to push the agenda because of exactly what's going on now. And I think whatever happens when we come out of this, hopefully in the next few weeks, there will, you know, the world will no doubt have changed. And part of that change will be the impact on well-being and mental health. And the fact that it's happened once means it can happen again. And, you know, if you look at how some of the Far East countries have managed this sort of pandemic, a lot of them have been prepared. You know, if you look at South Korea, Taiwan, for example, because they've experienced it before. So these sort of things leave a lasting impression, and I think one of the lasting impressions this will leave is kind of the fact that we need to address people's well-being, you know, and understand how they're feeling, and those issues around anxiety that will stem from this. And we, you know, that for us is we've got a tool that helps with that. So I think that, you know, the potential to do good there is quite big.
Yeah, we've said the same thing before on the show, that once as this crisis has unfolded, some of the periphery has been stripped away, and you've been left really relying on those connections and relationships, and either getting in touch with people who you haven't been in touch with before, or forging stronger connections even with people who you see regularly but now you don't see regularly. So that your product obviously just fits perfectly in with that connection. I mean, we're isolating away from my parents and my wife's mother as well, and so you can ring so much, but to have the opportunity to really feel their mood on a real-time basis is a very powerful thing. Very powerful.
Absolutely, because you don't want to be on the phone all the time asking, are you okay? But it's great to have a conversation when you've shared how you feel with somebody, sort of, and you can see sleep as well and activity. So you can get a really rounded conversation saying, you know, I see you getting plenty of sleep, which is great, or I see you're not sleeping well, you know, what's keeping you awake? And you have a conversation that you might never have had.
Yeah.
You know, I've noticed my steps have dropped because I'm not going anywhere. So from maybe 10,000, or maybe in my case, 6,000, or to something more like 1,000 as I wander around the house. And so there's reason for that. But if you suddenly saw that in somebody else, or if you didn't know what was going on, you'd be asking questions, you know, why are you not going out as much, you know? So that combination means that when you have those conversations, you get a really meaningful one. And at the same time, you have this feeling of being connected. So just knowing that somebody there could be when you press to denote how you're feeling, it's kind of a release, really. It's almost like the fact that you are sharing that there and then is quite a powerful thing, So,
I'm living it at the minute, really, because my mum's back in Northern Ireland. She lives on her own since Dad passed away, and the whole sort of, even if you haven't seen the data yet, it's the whole fact that she feels connected to me and my brothers because she has this on her wrist, and she doesn't always understand the whole tech behind it. She doesn't need to. She just needs to know that when she presses that, we get to see what that looks like and have a conversation about it. And at the minute, it's brilliant for me because she'll say, "Oh, pressed it so many times today, and then your brother rang," and it's that whole human touch element. And then obviously I'm in that age group and category. I'm 45, I've got 2 girls, and I've got mom at the other end of the spectrum, and being able to sort of say what happened today, what was nice and what wasn't nice, it is a whole new mindset for people. I would have, I went to university, I came over to Surrey when I was 18, and I've sort of been having this yes, everything's fine sort of life for the past 20 years, but it's really nice mechanism for saying, actually, things haven't been great today, but it's okay because I know that's because of X, Y, and Z. And it's really being able to put context behind feelings, I think, is a big thing for me as a family member.
Yeah, as you've said there, there's a real truth to it, isn't there?
Yes.
It's very easy to pick up the phone and just, oh yeah, of course, yeah, everything's okay, but there's a real honesty when you've actually got the sort of like the data points behind it as well.
Yeah. And that non-verbal thing is actually really powerful. We have users where there have been problems solved, where they wouldn't talk about issues. This is in a therapist situation. They wouldn't talk about issues, but they would press a button which would lead to the right sort of conversation. So it really is a good way of getting a meaningful conversation going.
Yeah.
And diarising moods, really, being able to diarise your mood. I've always had a journal, always had a notepad, but being able to sort of look back and sort of through the app that comes with the wristband, you're able to add notes. So you can add notes. It doesn't have to be copious amounts of notes, just things that have happened that day that give you context to that button press. And being able to do that allows you to know that you can look back retrospectively and go, oh, that was a bit of a phase, or actually that was really good. I didn't realize that actually I'm better than I thought I was. And this is the other aspect of that. One of our first trialers was somebody who had suffered from depression for X number of years. And he personally just thought he plateaued at being miserable. He just thought that was his common ground feeling. And when he saw his data set, even back then at the MVP stage, with very crude, sort of crudely extracted data, and visualizing a series of bubbles, and each button press, he went, well, that can't be mine because there's yellow there. And we went, well, you're the first one who's ever tried it, so it has to be you. It took some convincing, but suddenly he realized, actually, yeah, I'm not actually as bad as I thought I was. And I think that's a huge, huge thing to take into consideration, is that sometimes you're better than you think you are.
Yeah.
And, it's a positive tool as well as a negative. It's an early intervention thing. It's compounding and reassuring you that actually what you're doing is okay. It is the right decision.
Yeah, we've worked out from talking to people in our own experiences that negative experiences in the day overpower positive ones. There's a metric there that suggests it's by a factor of 10. So you can have lots of good experiences throughout the day, and then one negative experience, and it kind of ruins your day. But to be able to look back and see the positives actually makes you see the day differently. So instead of going to bed at night thinking that wasn't a great day for me, you can look back and say it was really good, apart from that, but the rest of the day was great. So that's one of the things we see mentioned quite a lot. The other one is it makes you more mindful, because especially if you use prompts, which is when you can get it to vibrate at preset time, it makes you stop and think about how you feel at the same time to the day each day. For example, you can very quickly spot trends around how you behave or how you feel. Good day, bad day, for example, how you feel throughout a period of time, and see whether it's it's getting better or worse or stable. And we had one user using it for pain, which is something we hadn't considered in the early days. And he had he had an ankle injury, a sporting injury that had been plaguing him for years. And he was anxious over it because he was convinced it was getting worse. And by using Moodbeam, he was able to determine it wasn't getting worse, it was stable. And that actually made him feel better because his perception was this is just getting worse. Yeah. And the other thing that it led him to was to change his orthotics, which apparently some sort of supports that go into your shoes or something, which came from his, I guess it would be a physiotherapist or doctor, based on what he learned from combining how he was feeling. He was logging pain, no pain. And also he worked out he needed 7 hours sleep, otherwise it was worse for him. Obviously he could measure how active he was, and that played into his sort of thinking as well. So for him, he's written as a huge testimonial on how important it's been for him. So there's those sort of surprise feedback we get every now and again, which is really, really good.
Yeah,
we created a campaign last October, and you guys were kind enough to provide ourselves, Phil and I, and our team Moodbeam devices. And we created a Facebook page. We had a health coach on board, a personal trainer. You guys came along and spoke to our team and some other people there. Also, so did Jem Davison, health coach, and also David Mankle, personal trainer, which was just great to come together alone for that kind of seminar was amazing. And we wore our devices for 2 months, and we kept tracking how we were feeling, our progress, what the device, the difference it was making to our lives. I said from a personal point of view, what stood out for me was being, you said there about being more mindful, and just by having the device and remembering that I was wearing it and pressing a button, I would then just more mindful in that moment of how I was feeling and also why I was feeling, because we can all be very guilty of moving so quickly through the day. And as you said, if you have one bad thing happen, that can ruin your day, and you've not really been too mindful of all the positive things that have gone in that day, which can often outweigh that negative moment. So that really worked with us, and I know our team members have continued with some of those positive habits that they developed over that time. So that was great for you guys to support us, and it was an amazing time for us to gain insight into that, and brought us closer as a team. It really did bring us closer as a team, because we had team members waking up an hour and a half earlier each morning to have a better structure and a kickstart their day, and they'd be posting pictures of a horse that they became friends with on their walk in the morning, and little selfies and stuff. And that's one example of many that we certainly benefited us as company owners and as a team as well. What are you guys experiencing now during these times, as with families with children in the home? We're asking this of all the people that are coming on the show. How are you dealing with this? You're business owners, you're juggling business and work, all of these new challenges that we're facing, along with, I imagine, educating and entertaining your children at the same time, right? So how does that look in your home environment right now?
Organized chaos.
I see, Christina. I mean, for those who are listening via the podcast, won't be able to see this, but people who are watching the video, it does look like you're on a building site. Can you tell us?
Yeah, has been the case for about a year. So we are literally in the final stages of a renovation on top of everything else. And we got a pass with the builders, and they were given the go-ahead to come and finish sort of our project outside. But every now and again I have to mute things because you'll get a boom, boom, boom banging going on. But thank goodness we've got a nice long garden at the front. My husband, who does work in construction, has taken himself off site, so he has been at home, and I don't quite know how I'd manage if he had been at work, because my kids are good kids, but they need occupied, they need instruction. So we've set up this room, big long table for us all to sit around, and we do have a bit of structure, because as well as adults, kids need as well, and really thank you. This is live. She's passing me a charger. Thank you. It's really all those moments that make it real, because we have all of these virtual video meetings going on all the time, and somebody will walk in and it's learning to just be chilled about it. Try and not be polished, be real, be authentic. And they're sitting doing their thing and I'm sitting doing mine. And actually it's really nice to have them in close proximity rather than somebody who needs to be shut away in another space. And, you know, and that's a big thing as well for me as a mum. You know, I've never once apologized for being a female in industry, certainly in media, and now certainly in tech. And this is another really good example of, this is me. Get it and understand it and work with it. And I think that's, you just got to go with the flow. Would you agree, Jonathan?
I think, I mean, you have it a lot harder than I do, if I'm being honest. I'm quite lucky. I've got an office at home and I'm used to working from home. So I can get a lot done here and I can close the door. And my wife has turned into a teacher since the start of this week. So and I can hear her stressing through the walls as she's teaching maths. Yeah, so yeah, she's got from the school a whole list of things that she needs to get through, and she's stressing over that. So she's taken that aspect of it. She's lucky that she's a potter now, is what Heather does. So she can, you know, she doesn't have a commitment to be anywhere. She just, it's not good for her mental health not to be doing what she likes doing. Yeah. So, so we're lucky in that we can work that way. But it's, you know, for me, I'm lucky in that I can carry on as normal, and Heather's taken over the schooling side of things.
So you're aiming for straight A's in arts and crafts in your house?
Well, she did actually, Eliza did win the art competition at school, I have to say. So there is something there. Yeah, it's maths, that's the problem. We all sit
Who
there
needs maths? You'll never take on.
I wasn't good at maths either. I'm good if I've got a calculator.
Yeah.
I like us all. Jonathan, just something away from Moodbeam, just a little story I'd like you to share with us and our audience, is that we had an amazing business coach on the week called Andrew Cousins, phenomenal guy, and he's been incredible and committed and sharing resources to our group, to our audience. It's really amazing. To have that support is incredible. And early on in his episode, he spoke about over I think it was a 3-day period where the stocks went from, was it 10p to 60p and to 1 pence? And he said he was walking around for a short period of time worth £12 million on paper. And not long after, he had to take a trip down to London, where he had to explain the loss of 23 million or 33 million pounds worth?
It was a huge figure. He said it made him who he is today, having that meeting, is what he said.
Yeah, he said that was certainly a life lesson. And I know there's a story when it comes to you, where was it one point? Correct me if I'm wrong. Was it where a gadget shop was worth 60 million or around about that figure at one stage, and you were offered 20 million pounds for your shares in the business, and you said no? And I won't go into any.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few stories there of that. Yeah, there was a point when we were going to float. This is in the late 90s. We were due to float, and then for those that remember, there was a .com crash. So we had a banking crash in 1987, just as I was, I think it was 87, as I was trying to raise money. I remember that. Then we had a .com crash in 2000 that killed the float we had planned and resulted in the company being acquired. Then we had the banking crisis in, when was that? 2005, I think. Would that be 2008? Sorry, banking crisis, 2008.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
That nearly killed us. And this current crisis we've got and the effects on the economy is probably worse than all of those, thinking about it, because it's affecting absolutely everybody. I mean, the banking crisis affects banks and the finance model and the world economy and so on, but it was tended to be focused on that, and it did have an impact on people's savings and borrowings and so on. But the rest of the world got on with it. This is and the .com had an issue, particularly if you were a small business with a .com thing at the time. Where if you were online, it had an impact. But this is affecting everybody. It's having an economic impact, and it's having a massive social impact.
Yeah.
And obviously, it's affecting everybody, not only in one country either. It's a worldwide. So,
that's the unique thing, isn't it? Everyone at the same time.
Yeah, but this is why I think it will have lasting. Somebody described it as being like BC and AD. It's like, when you say, "Oh, this was before," this is before Christ, and after Christ. This is like you could say it's before Corona and after disease. You can almost say, and you can conversations in years' time. So yeah, that was before the virus. That's that we did it that way after. I stopped because I think people are going to not travel as much. Certainly early on, I think then the business travel is going to change because lots of people are used to using video conferencing now, and those that hadn't used it before will have had their eyes opened to it and think, actually, instead of going, spending all day and traveling 400 miles to have a 2-hour meeting in London, I'll do it this way, and I've suddenly got all this much more time. I've saved a lot of money. I've done what I needed to do. I've spent more time with the kids. I've saved, save the planet as far as carbon emissions go, and there's going to be those sort of conversations. There's going to be the habits forming now that will change the way we live and work forever, and in some cases that'll be a good thing. I think it's a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people in a lot of different ways. I think the 4-hour working week could come out of this. I think
in Ferris.
And from a social point of view, I think that would be a really good thing, because more people will spend more time for their own well-being and also with their families and for their well-being, and it'll impact on relationships and all sorts of things. So we're living through a really what will become a historic phase, I think, in the world economy.
I was chatting about this with my boys the other night, because they study the plague at school. I was wondering how on earth you reference that in a year's time, 2 years' time, whatever, when it comes to that topic. I mean, how will this compare, within the curriculum? Because it's such a huge, monumental time, like you say.
Yeah, it'll be featured, definitely. It's like, we don't hear a lot about the Spanish flu, which is a similar thing to what we've got now. I think the death rate on that was 2 or 3%. But that killed somewhere between 50 and 100 million people. Yeah. I mean, and the reason is there wasn't the communication. So somebody couldn't communicate to everybody in a country, lock your doors. They just couldn't. People just got it. Everybody got it. I think in the end, they reckon most people had it, and 2 or 3% died. And that was the last time something like this happened. Now, clearly, it's not a great situation, but the communication, the internet and stuff like that means it's very different to how it could have been.
Yeah.
But that gets referred to, that killed more than, I think, all the world's wars combined.
Yeah. The thing is, we live in a world as well with an aging population, where, years ago you would have been lucky to see past sort of 65 many, many years ago, whereas now the norm is, sorry, I had to be careful there, Jonathan.
Careful now. I'm on borrowed time.
I was going to say, 400 years
Let's
ago.
wrap this up.
Go have a party. But, these days, 90 is the norm. And you're practically a youth in that case, John. But a serious point is that we do live longer. We have been living longer. We've got such a sophisticated health system that it keeps us alive for longer. And obviously we have age-related diseases now that are more prevalent, like dementia. But again, time will tell really if it is the older generation that are going to be the largest victims of this virus. But you do sometimes wonder just why these things happen. You know, where we will find out someday where it all came from, how it all happened. There's lots of different myths building already about escaped viruses and etc. But you know, it's ultimately how we learn as a race. And Jonathan's got this theory, and I back him on this, is that you know, a lot of technology has perhaps led to disconnect in society, where we're heads down culture. We have screenagers, you know, we have all of these different levels in life that stop us actually communicating as people. Wouldn't it be great to think that it's at some point we will not thank, because we'll never thank for the loss of life, but we will look back and go, thank goodness we realized that then, because, you know, thanks to this, we're closer to our families, we're closer to our colleagues, we're closer as human beings, and we're appreciating nature. You know, the rivers in Venice are clear, you know, lower emissions. You know, China and goodness knows many countries now have cut down on carbon emissions. As a result, they don't live in smog. You know, there's got to be a lot of pluses to take out of this. And that, I think, as human beings, we've got to fight for the pluses, because we could all sit and feel really negative, but that's not what we should be doing. We should be really fighting our way through this and looking for the pluses and cataloguing it in however we can, because this will be referred to as a massive event in history, and we're all part of that. So, finish now.
Powerful stuff. Pretty inspirational, I'd say. And I couldn't agree more. Absolutely couldn't agree more. Is there one tip that you would give somebody, one piece of advice that you would give our audience, whoever they may be, whether they're family members, business leaders? Is there something that you can inspire with, you know, with a simple tip or trick that you're experiencing, that you've implemented yourselves, whether that's in business or in home life? You know, there's something that springs to mind. We've covered quite a lot here. Just thinking if there's anything else.
That's quite a broad remit. I need a bit more specialisation than that. Christina, while I'm
yeah. Well, I think I've touched on it a little while ago, and I've sort of recorded another sort of quick video for other purposes this morning, and it's really just to embrace the authentic, be yourself more. You know, I've spent, and I hold my hands up to it, being, you know, in media for 20 years, I've spent far too long in my lifetime trying to be somebody else, or trying to be that better person, or try and appear polished and try and appear professional and try and do this and try and just be yourself. You know, this is no more a time than now can you be authentic. And I think I, for one, it took me to the age of 40 to really start liking myself at all, and speaking up and saying what was in my head rather than what I thought other people wanted to hear. So my top tip would be to take this time to just really start to like yourself more than anybody else.
Yeah, very good.
Love it.
Wash your hands. That would be mine.
Got me gloves. Does that help?
No, I guess it would be do it, I suppose. If you are, you know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of great ideas that they, through self-doubt or whatever, they just don't do it, and maybe look back on and think, I wish I'd done that instead. And I think whether, you know, changing your behavior, you know, if if things are ruining your day, then change it. If certain people you are with, you know, don't make you feel good, then change that as well. And yeah, the power, you know, you have the power to live your best life, and I think do more of what makes you happy, and change things that down.
Love that. You have the power to live your best life. Love that. Now, normally Phil would ask the question. He would. I'm sure he's chomping at the bit to ask about what authors or books you guys read. But I'm not letting him have it on this episode, because you did mention the 4-day working week.
4-hour work week.
The 4-hour work week, which we'll put in as a reference to the show. But I think, and this might bring a smile as well, because Phil commented on before we hit the record button. John, I'd like you, because for those that are listening, John is in his home office and he's got an array of items and gadgets and gizmos behind him on his shelves. And John, I'd like you to select one that you see that has some sort of story attached with it, a memory of such that you'd like to share with our viewers, with our listeners.
Just one out of all of these.
I did actually have written down 3 items from your shelf, but I thought that might be pushing it. So I mean, feel free.
No, I'll grab one.
Christina,
you're asking John to choose his favourite child.
Yeah. Oh, awesome!
Remember that?
Yeah.
Right. So Phil,
it's making me shudder.
So have you had a go on that before, Phil?
Yeah, it's the noise, isn't it?
So guess who it was that invented it?
No.
Yes.
Well, my name's on the patent for it. There was
Wow.
well, we sat down with some people we work with at Gadget Shop and trying to come up with something new. And I was quite keen to electrocute people. That was my mission, really. So there was a lot of debate about, would it put lives at risk if you give people an electric shock? And I think that's why a lot of people hadn't done it before. But what did exist at the time, you might have
Just
seen
red
it.
tape.
Well, yes, so businesses are generally nervous, so they would look at something like that and then sort of dismiss it. But I knew there was products out there. There was a pen where you press the button and it gives you an electric shock. Do you remember those?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
The lighter that would do the same.
Yeah.
So I thought if they can produce those, you're more likely to kill someone with one of those. Can you imagine? You give it to somebody who's, stood on some scaffolding and say, write it down here, and they fall off. So I thought, there's a precedent here. And then we did some research about, is 20,000 volts a lot? And it's actually not that much as long as you keep the current manageable. And so it's more the shock of the shock than the actual physical shock in terms of stopping your heart. So once we kind of got over that, we produced something called what was it called? Roulette. Because this one's called lightning reaction. Hold on. Shocking roulette. So that was the earlier version. You stick your finger in there and somebody randomly gets a shock. So
can you demonstrate it to us, Jonathan?
His batteries are gone, unfortunately. That's pretty hilarious in itself. But then we went and developed, when we knew we hadn't killed anyone with that one, we took it a stage further and produced lightning reaction. So as you know, you grab a handle and then you get this horrific noise. And when the noise stops, you press a button. And then the last one to press gets a shock. And then we started developing all sorts. We have an extreme version where everybody gets a shock, but the one who presses first. And then we did one that you can select who gets a shock if you win, sort of thing. So we had lots of different versions, and that went on to sell. We sold it at Red 5, and I think probably Gadget Shop. I mean, at Gadget Shop and probably Red 5, but it was sold worldwide. And I think it sold over 1 million pieces in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got some papers over there, and one of them is a patent for this, with a hand drawing of it and everything. I'll get it out, but it's in a pile of papers, so I'll frame that at some point.
Brilliant.
Yeah, a claim to fame. But yeah, so a lot of people had a lot of fun with that. It was on Radio 1 with Chris Moyles? Is that?
Yeah. Leeds boy, wasn't he?
He had an afternoon show. I think he moved from the morning to the afternoon, and they played it on Radio 1 live for about half an hour. That was like pure marketing.
Yeah, I bet.
Fabulousness, really, because the noise came across well, and then everybody screaming followed by the laughter. People listening to that thought, whatever that is, I need to get one of those.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
that helped the sales. And we were all sat in the office listening to Chris Moyles and his team playing it, which was quite a moment.
Awesome. Well, we'll wrap up, guys. But
just before we stop, I have to pass on a massive thank you from my wife, because one of the features of Moodbeam, which you don't talk about very much, and it's maybe a hack, is you can set it to vibrate to remind you at certain times during the day to.
Yeah.
So I use mine. It's the only thing I can wear at night while I'm asleep because it's such a soft rubber. So I set mine for 6 a.m.
Ah. Okay.
So it's a silent vibrating alarm clock on my wrist.
That's interesting. That.
So my wife's fast asleep until whatever time she wants to, and I'm up and away. And I haven't found anything else that I can wear at night that can do that can be an alarm clock.
That's interesting. That we have had a lot of people say it's great to wear at night because a Fitbit, which measures your sleep, is a bit cumbersome.
Yeah.
And an Apple Watch, for example, needs to be charging at night, so you can't really wear it. And this is super lightweight, as you know, and so on. So we knew that it works for people wearing it while they sleep, but you're the first person who's used it as an alarm clock, which is really
so cool. That is
absolutely. And I tell everyone about that first. It's like, it's amazing because it's a real like husband-wife issue. The different times that people want to wake up.
Yeah, because it wakes you both up, doesn't it? The alarm. Yeah, normally. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Then you get a slap and
yeah, that's it.
So your marriage is better because of these two guys. Is that right? Is that
absolutely?
There we are.
10 years and still going.
Could be a great wedding gift.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you guys? What's your website, your social hooks?
Over to you, Christina. I'll let you.
Yeah, so if you just log on to moodbeam.co.uk, or depending where you are in the world, you can also have .com, and our social media handles are at Moodbeam Life.
At Moodbeam Life.
And Amazon,
while
they have stock.
Yes, and Amazon as well. Yeah, you can find us on Amazon. But we are, if you Google us, we are, I think, in the top 5. As in every slot. So for mood logging wearable.
Yeah, and Jonathan, you just said eBay as well, was that?
Yeah, we're on eBay as well. So eBay, Amazon, and our own website if you want to buy one at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been incredible, as always, to connect with you guys. And as you know, I've got an immense amount of love for you both. So I wish you the best under these challenging times, and no doubt you'll have inspired literally thousands of people for being on the show today. So that's just awesome. So take care of yourselves and much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us on the Business Lockdown.
Please comment, like, share and subscribe to help build our global community.
We look forward to seeing you all soon.